أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين وأصلي وأسلم على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين سيدنا محمد على آله وصحبه أفضل الصلوات والتسليم. Dear brothers and sisters, I begin with praising Allah Azza wa Jal, and I bear witness that none has the right to be worshipped and unconditionally obeyed except for Him, and that Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is His last messenger, and we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to send His blessings and His peace upon Him, and the prophets and messengers before Him, His family and His companions, and all who followed His blessed path until the day of judgment. And we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to make us among them. Allahumma ameen. Dear brothers and sisters, according to recent human rights reports, the campaign on Gaza is the deadliest and the most destructive campaign in human history. وَحَسْبُنَا اللَّهُ وَنِعْمَ الْوَكِيلُ. And the reports are mentioning that during the last few weeks, 1,000 children in Gaza has performed amputation without anesthesia, because anesthesia and other medicine are prohibited to enter Gaza. And all the world is letting this horror happen. And for the last 84 days, while we are witnessing this tragedy unfolding in Gaza, all Muslims, we are feeling a sense of helplessness, a sense of guilt. We have now multiple Ammars, multiple Bilads, multiple Sumayyas that are tortured or martyred in Gaza. And then some questions begin penetrating our hearts. How the Muslim can deal with such calamity, with such tragedy? Is there any light at the end of this long tunnel? Can our brothers and sisters in Gaza overcome this calamity, overcome this tragedy? And today I want to take you through the Quran and the Seerah of the Prophet ﷺ and the Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ to seek answers for those questions. Dear brothers and sisters, as we are seeing Gaza being starved and cut off all supplies, their food is running out, their water is running out, I want to take you to a very specific scene of the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. One of the most painful scenes of the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. A scene of the seerah that resembles really what's happening to the people of Gaza now. It's about 7 years from the revelation of the Prophet ﷺ, and the new religion is still spreading. Islam is still spreading despite all the tactics Quraysh tried. So the torture didn't work. The persecution didn't work. And the chiefs of Quraysh are now feeling helpless in front of this new religion. So Abu Jahl and the chief of Quraysh, they met together, and guess what they decided? They decided to escalate the aggression against Muslims. So they decided to put all the Muslims, men, women, and children, and the tribe of the Prophet ﷺ, Banu Hashim, under total social and economic boycotting. So no one will be allowed to sell or buy from them. They will not sell food or water for them. No one is allowed to marry their daughters. No one is allowed to do any trading with them. No one is allowed to accompany them or to do anything with them. Cut them off from all directions until what? Until they hand the Prophet ﷺ to Quraysh to be killed or executed. And this boycotting was devastating. For 3 years, the Muslims lived in a concentration camp. And food was so scarce that the Prophet ﷺ and the companions ate what? They ate the leaves of the trees. And the women and the children and the suckling babies of the Muslims were crying from hunger, that their voices were heard over the valley of Sha'b Abi Talib. So they were isolated in a place outside Mecca of Sha'b Abi Talib, and their voices were heard from Mecca, crying from hunger. And the Prophet ﷺ and the Sahaba, the companions, give us an example now. And they faced this cruelty by their unshakable faith. And you know what the results after 3 years? The siege on Muslims had been raised, and the boycott of Quraysh didn't bring any result, and Allah Azza wa Jal gave victory to the Muslims. And the Prophet ﷺ and the companions showed to their enemies, showed to Quraysh, that they cannot be bullied to submission. They cannot be bullied into submission. And I want you, brothers and sisters, to think now about Gaza as the Sha'b Abi Talib of this era. And when we see the people of Gaza being starved along 84 days, I wanted to bring this scene of the seerah to show you the type of hunger that the Prophet ﷺ and the companion faced. And this is the best generation. I wanted to show you the type of hunger, the best generation and the best person Muhammad ﷺ faced. And the type of patience and perseverance and unshakable faith they had in order to be victorious over their enemies. Also, brothers and sisters in Gaza, when we are seeing this genocide in Gaza, what adds to our pain that we have enemies from within. We are seeing Muslim presidents and Muslim kings plotting against Gaza with the enemies. And they are sending supplies to the enemies, encouraging them to kill more of our brothers and sisters. And this is adding to our pain. And for this, I brought you a hadith from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. عن أبي أمامة رضي الله عنه قال: لا تزال طائفة من أمتي على الحق ظاهرين لعدوهم قاهرين لا يضرهم من خالفهم إلا ما أصابهم من لأواء حتى يأتي أمر الله وهم على ذلك. قالوا: وأين هم يا رسول الله؟ قال: ببيت المقدس وأكناف بيت المقدس. Allahu Akbar. So the Prophet ﷺ, more than 1400 years ago, was describing us as if he is describing for us the people of Gaza now. He is describing a group of this ummah in the neighborhood of Jerusalem, Baytul Maqdis, that are manifest upon the truth. على الحق ظاهرين. Actually, they are manifest upon the truth that they drive their enemy crazy, and we are seeing now. And one of their characters, that they are not harmed, they are not discouraged, but by those who betrayed them, by those who failed them. And the Prophet ﷺ brought for us a glad tidings that they will be victorious over their enemy. لِعَدُوِّهِمْ قَاهِرِينَ. So they will be victorious over their enemy. But the victory for Islam, brothers and sisters, for this religion, and the liberation of Palestine, and the liberation of Aqsa will not come without a price. This will take a much sacrifice for the sake of Allah Azza wa Jal. And Allah Azza wa Jal is choosing among Muslims the best of us for the sacrifice for His sake. And Allah Azza wa Jal is choosing among us the people of Gaza now. So don't be worried about them. We worry about us. And also in Gaza, we are now seeing the most advanced technologies, the most advanced artillery, the AI-guided bombs used against our brothers and sisters of Gaza. We are seeing armies of multiple of the major powers on this planet plotting and supporting the enemies. And we are seeing our brothers and sisters in Gaza and asking ourselves, are they able to overcome all of this? So for this, I'll bring you some ayat from the chapter of Tariq, from Surah Al-Tariq. إِنَّهُمْ يَكِيدُونَ كَيْدًا وَأَكِيدُ كَيْدًا فَمَهِّلِ الْكَافِرِينَ أَمْهِلْهُمْ رُوَيْدًا. So they plan, I plan. They think they have the element of power. They have a good strategy. They have the element of deception. But Allah Azza wa Jal is telling us that if they are planning, I am planning against them. So leave them. مهلهم أمهلهم رويدا. Leave them for Allah Azza wa Jal and focus on one thing, to do the best you can and to make the best tawakkul on Allah Azza wa Jal. They think that their plan is bulletproof, cannot be defeated, but actually their plan is weak. إِنَّ كَيْدَ الشَّيْطَانِ كَانَ ضَعِيفًا. And the plan of Allah Azza wa Jal is the perfect one. وَأُمْلِي لَهُمْ إِنَّ كَيْدِي مَتِينٌ. So their plan will fall apart by ways they will never expect. They will never expect. Allah Azza wa Jal is plotting and planning against the oppressors. So what's our role? You focus on tawakkul. You focus on taqwa. You focus on doing your best to support your brother and sisters. Al-akhdh bil-asbab. And now be sure that every single plan they are putting against our brothers and sisters will backfire on them. Whether this shows itself after 10 days or after 10 months or after 10 years. So be sure of it. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم فادعوه إنه خير الغافرين. Dear brothers and sisters, we went through a scene from the Seerah and a hadith from the Prophet ﷺ and some ayat from the Quran, trying to understand what's happening in Gaza. So what's the silver lining of this? What comes out of this? This khutbah have some very important conclusions. The first one, that Allah Azza wa Jal is showing to us that the recipe of dealing with such calamity is to return back to the Quran and the Seerah of the Prophet ﷺ. To live with the Quran and the Seerah and try to reflect on the verses of Quran that are talking of similar situation. Try to read in the Seerah and to see how the Prophet ﷺ dealt with similar situation. So we need all as a Muslim community to live and return back to our Quran and the Seerah. This is one. The second one, through those hardships and calamities, Allah Azza wa Jal is building the characteristics and the spirituality of this ummah. There is a message for us from Allah Azza wa Jal that we cannot go through such calamity except by tawakkul ala Allah, except through Him to return back to Allah Azza wa Jal. And third, what the people of Gaza are doing now, that they are building for us and for the world a new world, instead of an old dying world. An old dying world full of morally bankrupt politicians. And as we saw in the Seerah, Abu Jahl and the chiefs of Quraysh, they thought that by using brutal force, they will break down the spirit of the Muslims. And they failed. And the empire of the enemy and of the old world is crashing now under his own brutality, under his own injustice, is crashing now under its own lies, under its own double standards. And if the enemy is thinking that by using brutal force, they will break down the Muslims' spirit and bring them to submission, it only ends up that he is breaking down his own image first, and not the Muslim spirit. But be sure that Allah Azza wa Jal is watching. And He will deal with the oppressors and with the occupiers. Be sure from it. But to change this world, this old world, this will take time. This will take much sacrifice, not from the people of Gaza alone, from us also. What's happening in Gaza should change our priorities as individuals and as Muslim communities. For us as individuals, we need to recalibrate. We need to reconnect to Allah Azza wa Jal, to return back to Quran and Seerah and the Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. And for the community, we need to be united. We need to bring all the Muslim community united and confront our leaders here in Canada and the international leaders to say to them, enough is enough. We need to stop this crime. We need to get a ceasefire. We don't need our tax dollars to be sent as weapons overseas. We as Muslim community have the right to demand, to do petition, and to elect politicians that represents our interest as the Muslim community. And at the end, we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to bring victory to our brothers and sisters in Gaza, to strengthen our faith, and to make the ground firm, to protect them, to make the ground firm under them, to liberate them once and for all, and liberate the Aqsa, and liberate Palestine. نسأل الله عز وجل أن يغفر لنا جميعا وأن يفرج كرب إخواننا في غزة وأن يسدد رميهم وأن يهلك عدوهم وأن يجعل لهم مما هم فيه فرجا ومخرجا وأن يفك هذا الحصار الظالم عنهم. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم وأقم الصلاة.